Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining in for this workshop on learning economics for debating by Abraham. We are very glad to have Abraham on board with us today, and he is one of the persons who is very importantly active in the circuits and would be a very good facilitator for this session. And we are hoping to hear nice things from him in terms of how we can use economics and debating as well. Again, thank you everybody who is part of the participants to joining into this for joining into this meeting. On behalf of Global Speech and Debate Council, the Debate Center, Lauricia Podium, and the Debating WhatsApp, we welcome you to this next session on our series of workshops. So, Abraham, without any further delays, then over to you. Thank you again for joining in and hoping for a great session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kashidas, for this presentation. Abraham, Ative, I'm leading you through this session throughout how to learn economics for debating. And without further ado, I'll be presenting my PPT to you. Just give me just 1 minute, and I'll try to be doing that. Only 1 minute, please. Okay. So now, as you can see, for today's session is on economics, how economics work really in the debate world. And what you're going to see is that how you're going to use it in order to make this more debate more engageable for the audience and the judges and all like, people attending to that. So the first thing that you're going to see in this is, like my slides working? Okay, first is learning economics for debating actually and how it's going to be done. And the second thing that you're going to see is that, let me remove this. Okay, is we are going to be understanding the economics, how its essence, like debate skills, by providing you already here in the framework, like the framework for analyzing the issues that is, for example, in the debate critically. And it's going to be doing something that's more additionally by equipping you with the tool that's already help you to craft this kind of, compelling arguments that are rooted, let me shift this, that are rooted in real world implication and supported by data. So my info slide will be, more based on how to, up level that skill in within you, more than only to give you, substantive argument within of itself. So today is going to be a general overview about how economics is really and the real world and how also to be implementing it right away in the debate circle as well and to make more impact. Now, on the second slide, you're going to see is on why economics matters in debates, actually. So we're going to see 4 layers of how this implication is very important for actually using economics in debates and see how its implication also is look like. The first thing that you can also see is that the economic reasoning of of that framework already in debate give you already kind of critical thinking that you have to do. So this kind of, economic reasoning encourages you to have a kind of, systematic approach to problem solving already. And what is doing is that this problem solving is helping you to enhance your critical thinking skills that are essential in debate actually. And this kind of, logical frameworks enable debaters to construct coherent arguments. What I mean by, economical reasoning, which you also equate to the critical thinking is that it happens that you can also be debating some kind of motions that are unbinding, some kind of supply already that's coming up. But without the data that you have in your hand, this will be helping you now to be, more engaging with it. But I feel like the second one, which is the analyzing of policy logically, will help us more to understand what I just said in the first, matters of the economic debate. This is how, for example, you are understanding the economics will allow you. For the sake of this presentation, if you see debaters, it's for you, please. I just make it so that I might know who I'm going to talk about, like talk it to. Now, this is going to be allow you to have kind of, evaluation in the implication of policies based our motion with clarity. And this kind of analytical skill is also vital for forming the robust argument that are, grounded in reality. Because we have policies that are behind what kind of, like economical, outcome is gonna be, and how also the bill have been already voted anyway, also in the parliament or wherever that would be. And for also motion clarity, this also within of the debate himself that he's talking about, like how you're going to be analyzing it based on that. If you evaluate that policy very well, that means you are going to be doing your debate more logically and making sense out of it. Now, the third one is you are going to be supporting your arguments with an evidence-based argument, actually. So these are more convincing because if you integrate it by what given credible like economical data, this helps already to substantiate your claims and making your position more compelling to the audience and the judges. The reason why is it very important for us that at times we do debate and we think of debate like, for example, I'm going to be giving my argument based on some kind of information I have about my background, or sorry, about my environment. I mean, so this already doesn't give you a complete database that already proves to the judges that this debate on the economical level is it already being something very important for me to buy it. If that is already being something ready to be bought, what is the evidence that we are showing me? This is what the support evidence-based argument is for. It's be giving you more more credibility into your substantive that you are giving to the judges and the audience, actually. And the last one is that we need also to show impact, which is why your argument also is very important in your debate. And this is where also we have to show real world impact in everything that you want to be showing to the judge, actually. And the other things also is this, that you have to be citing measurable economic consequences that happens, and those kind of economic consequences are sort of like GDP growth, unemployment rates, inflation, and poverty levels. That is already a kind of illustration that you're going to be using from the real world impact of policies that happen throughout the debate that you be also, verbalizing, argumenting also throughout your debate, actually. And the other thing also you can see is that these kind of connections to the actual data help you already to solidify the argument relevancy. And as you can see earlier about how we are going to be using data and show how the real impact is going to be, it's like, for example, like as this the same argument at all, like yes, the same argument I took on how, for example, you said you're going to take it like there's going to be on like some bans on some products, exported in your country. And it happened like you haven't been given why this already be like very important for you to be doing it, because we have also principle behind it that we see after in this presentation too. So those four ones here give you already how you're going to be approaching this kind of economical debate motions, even though you are in pros or you are in cons. So these are very important for you to be taking these four steps more ahead. Now, the other thing also we'll be seeing is that we have to know, like, we need to know some key economic concepts that are very paramount for you not to be going authority, because debate at times revolve around how principle also gather things. Because if there's no principle, there's nothing that is called to be, pushing people to do certain kind of action. This is why it's also very important for us to be seeing the five paramount, I would say, principles that get at all the economic level very important. Now, what also I'd like to also to clarify here, the economical level is also different for what is the financial level as well when it comes to monetary things. Because if you see the economic himself is a kind of word that used to tend to give you more clarity on how people used to do some certain things, like the preferences, why they have to choose certain action over others. So this is why it's very important to understand this principle. So the first principle that we are going to be seeing, like you'll be engaging with, is the supplies and demands in this presentation. The reason why the supplies demands is very important is that it's the fundamental concept in the economics that explain how the price and the quantity of goods are determined in the market. And if you understand already how this, the supply and demand already foresees the interactions, you can also be better predicting the outcome of an economical policies on pricing and resources availability. Because it might happen, like for example, in this debate, let's take more, example to clarify things. Like it might happen that when you say like supply and demand, it seems like, for example, you'll be supplying a kind of good for a kind of scarcity happening on the market. And now the demand is like, what is the market demanding from what you're going to be supplying them now? Are they demanding more product that you already been given into them? Or are they also having a lot of supply already that they are not have, like they don't want already to be getting in as well? So this is how the supply and demand work if you want to be debating it in that kind of principle level. And the second one is the opportunity cost. This is very, very important for us because it's the one that drives us most of the times. Like this economic word is also part of also a societal word, which means in the status quo right now, you can see that we are all on Zoom, following what you're doing. That means you are already open for the opportunity cost. That means already in this scope, you choose to be here rather than to be elsewhere. That means that you already choose to be, learning about how the economics also shapes your argument in debate. That way more than things that we can also see like elsewhere right now. This is what is called the opportunity cost. Now, as you can see for the slide, this refers to the potential benefits that are lost when one alternative is chosen over another, in simple words. So in debate already, if you recognize this kind of opportunity cost, is going to be allowing you to see to actually articulate the trade-off. So this is where the trade-off of policies and decisions making come in, and by making your argument more nuanced and impactful. Because here people have preferences that they do, and those kind of preferences that they have to be taken on is that the preferences have to be more important than anything else. It's happened to people if, for example, they having to choose between Harvard and what is the local university is giving them back as value educationally. And this is why you can see the opportunity cost being more a trade-off on how to choose other than the one they have in their surrounding already be given. Now, on the next slide, on the next principle is on the incentives himself. So this third, principle in the economic himself is very important for us to be understanding how people react to things when it's happening in this kind of economic world, because the incentive itself is like there are rewards or penalty that influence the behavior of the individuals and organization itself. Which means that if, for example, it happens that we already penalize some kind of goods in the market, for example, we say that we are not going to be having certain kind of product on the market. How does it affect people's? How does it affect the supply already that is in the demand, the supply and the demand itself in this kind of ecosystem of this country, of this kind of economical organization and stuff. So these are what happens stuff, and the reward is like if you have more opportunities that are given to those kind of specific like people and stuff at that particular time. So those are what also try to be like, those are the incentive that already change how peoples also behave in a certain way that happens throughout any changes that happen at that time. Now, the more important thing is that if you understand those incentives, it helps you already to be what? To be explaining how people already in this first form, respond to changes in laws and policies that will occur. And thus making your argument more relatable and actionable. Because If we mean relatable, actionable, it means how this is going to be more talking about the behavior that those people are more likely is going to be portraying. Or if you say actionable, it means any action that those people are going to be taking is more predictable by those kind of incentives already. If you say there's not going to be more water coming up into a country, that means that those people first of all are going to be lacking of this water and seeking out of those other suppliers that will give them the same water that they're looking for. This is where we can see the incentive changes people on that line. Now, the fourth principle that we'll be saying is how we have the market failure. The market failure is another principle in the economic debate that we'll be having as well. This is a principle that occurs when free markets fail to allocate resources efficiently and leading to negative outcomes such as monopolies and public goods issues that happens. Let's just try to be illustrating this a little bit so that you might understand, even though the terms might be simple. But if you see how the market failure occurs, that people will say like this kind of goods of, like, for example, like water shortages supplies. If that happens, we are going to be having like more people dying out of, like, the bad outcomes, that more people dying out of during like droughts because there's not water itself to supply for the agriculture. Now the agricultural level, that's going to be more catering for how people are going to be having food, and this food is more likely giving more people living substantive that is going to be give them more way to live on. Now, where the monopoly come in is that is when we are not having any other than the private sector who can only provide for it. This is where they provide, like, even though that can be also the government himself if the private sector also fail into providing it, or if other structures also have this kind of monopoly to supply or to be the only one doing it. This is where we can see the monopolist also, or we have the public goods issue happening when the market failure happens as well. So if you understand very well, the misallocation of resources is the one leading to the market failure principle itself, as you can see. But on the other hand, you can see that this helps you to see if you can leverage this concept to argue for the government intervention, or to argue for alternative solution that might happen, because you might think of the government is the one that has to cater for the real basic need for this, like the real basic need for the population itself at the first, before even comes in any external intervention that might come if the government fail to do that. Now, the fifth one is on externality. The externality level, like the externality principle itself, is the one that deal with the costs and benefits of a transitions that affect third parties who are not involved in the transition itself directly. This is very more traditional, because if, for example, it might happen that some, like, let's take one example. If you see enterprise that already manufacture cars, and we see that we have other suppliers of iron from very remote places supplying iron to those kind of or let's take steel companies, and those steel companies provide those iron and any kind of constructive material that those car manufacturers have. They are already being the two parties more involved. But the externality happens when those people already have some external damaging to any kind of climate change setup right now, like when those kind of metal manufacturing companies already are polluted. They were like the environment right now, that are not the third party not be affected by those kind of effects that they are already being impacted on them negatively. This is where we are having the externality principle comes in, because they are not into what they are having, like, for example, the deal that you're already being taking in, like keep it doing it, but they are already affected by how those people affecting them without even getting any kind of, benefit for what the deal is actually. And this concept or this principle is also crucial in debate because as it highlights the broader societal impacts of economical principles, and it allows you already to present more comprehensive view on an issue, which might also be happening like some unseen issue that might happen possibly if the other or the opposition or government didn't, highlight it at the end of the day. Now we'll be going more into what are some ways we can use in order to be implementing this kind of, economics in the debate himself. And as you can see in here, we'll be seeing, five things again today words. The first thing is how to construct argument examples and to analyze trade-off carefully. And thirdly, to focus on unintended consequences that will happen and to frame economical impact and to support with data evidence. So, oh, sorry, let me go back. Okay, so the first one that we need to understand that if you are having like any kind of motion, for example, I require from the audience if I'm still audible. Yeah, okay. Can the audience propose me? Yeah, let me on this.
You're still audible if you're asking.
Yeah. Can I have a kind of motion from you, like any kind of economical motion, so that I might
What
have
kind
to
of
do?
motion would you need from me? Any type of motion works, right?
Yeah, any type of motion that are more.
This house believes that economic growth is stimulated through financial policy and therefore government should focus on it.
Okay.
There's one on the
Let
chat
me see.
also. This house supports global shift away from the USD.
Yeah. Don't see. Okay, let me type on this. Okay. Please, I'm sorry, but I'm not seeing this. Let me on this. I feel like my. Okay. Just tell me. Just tell me right now because I'm not having my screen on.
I can read
Uh,
it for you, no worries.
okay, yeah.
So the motion in the chat reads, this house supports the global shift away from the USD.
Okay, yeah, I saw it. Thank you very much. This helps support the global sheets away from USD. Okay, I feel like the USD the US dollar actually. Now, in this motion tab already is on the finances where, for example, the here is more on finance itself, as I highlighted before, because here is dealing with how the money also is going to be having, or if any clarity from the USD, is it an acronym? Because I want to understand before engaging. Okay, let me take a motion. Please one moment.
I couldn't get you. Were you asking something? Abraham,
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. Yes,
you were asking something? I couldn't catch you.
yeah, I get it now. So, as I said earlier, I said this is more on financial level. And as you can see, like for example, on the constructive argument of this kind of argument on how we are supporting the shift away from the United States dollars is that why the shipments away from the United States could be economically beneficial from the probe's world is when, for example, you are having this kind of evidence when we say that it's going to be reducing the global dependencies and vulnerability. Because on the economical principle, as we can see right now, we see how people have this tendency to be choosing what to trade off. As you can see, how we say it, like I don't know whether I'm see, yeah, as we say it already here, because many people have the currency very low regarding to how the US dollar is, because it's required that they have the US dollar being, the currency of, like the balance on which they have to, swap the currency actually. And as you can see, like many countries are exposed to the US monetary policy. And this happened when also we can see the US Federal Reserve raises interest rate because they have the monopoly already on them, where it comes from borrowing costs from borrowing, which cause the increase globally. And we can see often if it's hurting the developing, economics. And this is more likely to shift away from the USD, which can give, countries more monetary independence. Because if, for example, in this way already, like if I go on to the focus on the intent, like on the unintended, consequences, what is going to happen is that, there's going to be more promotion of, fairer, like global trade, because this dominates himself that you see in the dollars, give the US dollar already like a currency privilege that already in these, motions is a monopoly that they are having. And this monopolies is giving also a kind of negative outcomes, which is that this kind of monetary like monopolies is not giving any, way out to those people to choose between alternatives. This is where they are not having any, any way out, not to be having any principle on how they have to be choosing, the cost and benefits of what they have to be doing actually. And this is where we can see they're moving towards a more diversified currency system, like the euro or the yuan or any local currencies swap can level up the playing field in the international trade, which is more likely making it more, engageable for them. So this scope of this motion already bring us to many kind of ways whereby we can see people already being, taking the currency level more of, how it's going to be impacted people. And even though we take it more on some level whereby this is going to be happen. Let's take the upsword. The upsword is gonna take us like to say that they are against the way that this kind of shifts is shifting away from the US aid because of many kind of trade-off that they are also having, because they want, to maximize the good himself and to have more of utility that's come at the end of the day. Because the first incentive will be that if we take it, it's going to be bringing us more stability and trust. Because the other implementation, for example, from any other external, we say like currency swap, that's happened even though we take the yuan right now, that's being more let's say or the euro that is more being took by any kind of entities right now is going to be giving them more shifts, and this shift is not going to be covering the global effects himself, because it's going to be restricted to some people who doesn't have any kind of external, I would say, like any links with the dollar himself, because they are not akin to it. And what is going to happen is that this kind of US aid is already backed by largest and more stable economic with deepest financial markets, and this is where it's more likely linked to trust, and any kind of trade-off that is going to happen is the old world is going to see that this is not going to happen actually. And there will be more focus on unintended consequences, which is like they need more efficiencies and transition cost reduction, because this is the existing currency, and the shift away is more likely to affect more economic that already been running at the status quo. Now, this is where the reductions of these exchanges is more giving like rate raise to people, where the transition costs and the uncertainty of the international transition is going to be more secure at the end of the day. Now, let's move on to the next slide. I feel like this is not going to be a debate that we're going to be engaging right now, but just to illustrate how it's going to happen if you are debating any kind of economical, motion. But if it's linked to this kind of motion, it's more, financial than like it is more on finances than on economic himself. Because it's dealing with a currency, and currency also can also be into economic himself, but they are more detached entities, like per speaking. Now, on the other thing you'll be seeing from this debate is that we need to understand some tips. Let me show this. We need to understand this by some tips used which help us to understand how to debate economical motion itself effectively. So the simple thing that you need to do is that if, for example, you are having this session and it happened like, for example, the first one, we said like the simplicity of complex concepts. I know that many can say that we are from, like, you just read it from ChatGPT or wherever you read the information from. You can just, come up by giving it, straight line to the audience you are engaging with. Because what it implies that in debate words, what is it very important is that you need to clarify things in a simple way that everybody can understand whatever the jargon is behind the concept you want to be articulating to people. The reason for is that if you didn't be able to do so, you will not be able to be convincing the judges himself, and the average intelligent voter himself also do are the audiences present with you. This is why it's very important for you to be simplify things for them to see, because if the simplicity doesn't exist, that means that you are giving the lecture which is not very, affordable in the world of debate, because we want to understand what your subjective and what you are articulating and what is very, important for us to take off home into that particular level. Now, onto the second layer is that we need to be incorporating relevant statistics, because in the economic themselves, it's more with statistics like give people, because if you just stated your economical like argument without any kind of relevant statistics, it's make it more implausible for the judges to buy it, or even for the audience even to understand it more. Because even though with the motion just given about the support on the shifting away from the US, like the US dollars, it's happened that we can say that majority of people, like 80% of them, have been up enough for it already. It gives them already a mental view of what you are saying, because you get already a proportion of how this already been up, like been taken by the majority of people, and already they have a kind of 20% of it left in the in the heart, saying that if this is 20% already left, this means that we can also be like, we cannot take it, or like take it on, by saying that we have to be open for the shift already, or it might happen on the same word, like the same like house from the probe or from the op, ideally. Now, on the other thing also that we can also be given is the highlight on real world impact. Because talking about economic also can happen, we can be saying that the International Maritime Fund, like monetary funds, also can be having his implementation in like akin to the debates that we already been seeing, give as example. Now, if you give the highlight, if you are already highlighting the real world impact, it gives you more plausible, because the plausible substantive that will be coming out from you is that, let's take the argument itself is not on the level whereby you are just like you'll be given more hypothetical like incentive to like not incentive itself, sorry, but a lot of hypothetical yes, substantive as your argument goes on. But you need to be more focused on what will happen to real human beings if that happens. If that kind of let's take the human, like the USD, like himself on, like if that kind of like shift happens to the USD to the USD currency himself. How is the market gonna function himself? And how also this kind of market is going to be more impacting on corporation and people who are already buying or already trading from continent to continent, even from country to country or intra and outra countries is like intra and outra countries, transaction is going to be more impacted. This is where we can see, like, if you give them already this, real world impact, is going more likely to give those people a great picture of how this is happening impact on them. Not to be taking them that this is going to be like impacting how human beings are going to be traveling from Earth to Mars, possibly. Because we are living in something that is attaching us, directly, not on things that is going to be having a long-term, impact. Because economy is dealing with people who are having, a status quo preferences. This is where like economics works, because it's talking about what is happening right now himself. And this highlight also happened when, for example, let's take some petty, example here. Is the same thing when you're talking about someone who's hungry. Like the person hungry and talking about how he's gonna get, his food in the next 10 hours. This nonsensical himself, because you're not already solving the existing problem for the person. That's why also you don't need to, go more further into what the existing problem look like. And giving more, real world impact is when we are giving the people like the solution for the people the solution for the person to see how, if for example he needs to be going to McDonald's or to offer something, home cooking himself, even though he had to be going out also to look for things that is street food that's giving them, a very fast solution. And the more impact for is that if this is not going to have any kind of, outcome from it at the end of the day. Now, on the fourth ones, which is the tip that we'll be using, is how to use analogy to clarify things into the impact, like into the economical, like into that kind of, like economical motion given to you. Because it happens at times, if you'll be more likely, debating economic motions, there are certain nuances that happen that you cannot give in you cannot give more of examples that are existing. You can use analogy in order to give what happens. Let me just, take the existing motion that's given, that they support us, how we're going to be shifting away from the USD reserve. Oh shit. So now, what this is going to be is that you'll be taking, let's take one, argument himself when it's happened from the appropriate word, when they say like this is like already like the way the currency also existed. The currency, we can take this analogy by saying like we have already in, like the analogy can be like we have like already one man supplying only food for a greater neighborhood himself, which is the USD himself, which means that the supply already from this USD from the global exchange, like has been a global exchange, currency, is giving already the people already the knowledge on where to go already to choose how also this kind of, people work. Is this give you already, I would say, a knowledge about where this kind of solution is and where is it from and who is supplying it. And this give you already how, if for example this mom, as analogy please, is the one supplying for this greater neighborhood himself. If a new one comes, it's going to be making it more, not as a monopoly, which means people will shift into there, but have to be now, engaging with the now study as like studies on how this person is going to be reacting, or what is the policy behind his currency, or whatever it must likely going to be looking like. This is how we can use even simple, analogy in order to clarify it to people to see how is it. Because if you drift away more from it, is give them more cape, like sorry, more gap to be understanding how it's going to be actually, because they will see it more philosophical to be grasped, like at hand, than to be more simple thing to deal with. Because the more simplest your argument, the more easiest for it to be binary. It doesn't mean that it's going to be more the simplest one, but it's going to be more of how you explain it actually. This is where those tips comes in. Now, on the fifth one, which is the practice of effective communication, is that we debaters happens to be more likely to see our argument more on how you're going to be to structuring it, to give it in how you're giving your claims, your implement, like your illustrations, your impact, your your link to it, which is going to be like how it's going to be having any kind of, I might say, like how it's going to be impacting people at the end of the day. So the communication itself from it linked to the economical motions, that how, for example, you are more communicating your thought to people. Like you need to be practicing how the economic himself look like, because most debaters I've seen so far in in the debaters, like in the debate circles, when it's going to be debating on the more efficient level, how this is going to be taken from a simplest level to the chemical level and bringing back to the simplest level is kind of difficult, because they have been debating how laws himself rub around, because debates mostly is also be also like is also linked to laws mostly, and it happened that they have this nuance into bringing like a kind of merge of law and economic that happens. But if you try, as you just take it just right now, and to understand how you be effectively communicating some of the principle that you see already, like the market failures or whatever the incentive himself that you be using in your argument around your 7 minute 50 second that you be using. That's giving you more clarity on how you be tackling those kind of economical arguments himself. And the other ones will be how you be giving more simplest argument at the end of the day. Now, the last one, which is the anticipation of question and the misinterpretations, is that I put that at the end because it's dealing with the PY actually. It's not about question, but it's dealing with how to anticipate PY from your debaters actually. And the reason why is it very important also to be anticipating is that you need to see, even though you gave the trade-off or you give the counter argument, how this counter argument is going to be more weaker in the upward, or even though you are from from the opposition, and how it's going to be more weaker on this kind of govward. And this kind of focusing on how this is going to be more weaker is going to be happen, like if you be like this anticipation going to be give you more I would say, like putting you more far ahead of what what either house is going to be thinking about how the argument will be. Because even though before tackling it, they have to be thinking about how this is going to be more, like the lesser the impact, the lesser like the less impactful the argument is going to be. Do you see? And this is where we have to be more anticipation the question that's coming up as well. And as you can see also in the misinterpretations level, is that there's certain types of things that people also think of when it's going to debate on the economical levels, that there's certain terms that doesn't really like have any kind of I would say how can I put it, like any kind of link with the economic himself. It just have any link with anything like finances, as you can see right now, or you can see the fintech himself right now, and have to do with like any external level of things, and they bring it into the device themselves. But if you more understand the principle as you just said it right now, and more work on it and fleshing out how you can be seeing more nuances that happen at the end of the day with it, this is where we can see how the misinterpretation from any kind of like person or any kind of misinterpretation that you also will be encountering at the end of the day will help you more in order to to see it at the end. And I feel like this is not the end, but we'll be dealing with the quick debate strategy that you'll be seeing. So these 40 that I prepared for you in this info slide. And the first one is how to identify the economic actors themselves. So here we're going to go quickly. Now, we need to be understanding the key players like in the economic scenario, which help us now to be clarifying who stands to gains or lose from a proposed policy or actions himself that happens. Because it's looked like the stakeholders already been into the identification of the economic actors themselves. So this identification of the actors allows you already to frame like your argument around the interest at stake, making the discussion more relatable and impactful. Because if, for example, you want to be debating it, how, for example, in this kind of shifting of the US 8, sorry, US dollar itself, it's going more likely to be, impacting people who use it like globally itself, like from um market suppliers and many people also who rely on those kind of policies, sorry, currencies, and how it's going to shift also the policy that already be in forces, and how it's going to be affecting the global market and people who are going more likely to buy from those kind of market himself at the end of the day. So this is where we have to be identifying the economic actors himself of it. And you need also to check the incentive himself because it plays already a crucial role in determining the behavior of people. If, for example, this currency happening right now, how is people going to be saying that for example this currency is going to be making me use more money to buy it or less money to buy it, is happened that is already low at the currency rate level itself when it's come to currency exchange etc on the global market itself. And by understanding it, it's giving you like how the individual and businesses respond to this change or policies. And it can also help you to predict here the outcomes and help you already, to shape your argument accordingly to what will happen on this kind of level that will come in. And this also kind of insights from the check of incentives enable like a better grasp or enable like a better understanding of the potential effect on any kind of proposed motion that you'll be taking at the end of the day. Now, on the third one is how you have to be measuring the magnitude of it, which means how the impact is going to be more larger from any kind of if you take it from a kind of per rate level, like how it's going to be like per rate by more magnified one. Like for example, it's coming from the greater one and how it's going to be scaling up to from like a very lower one from it, even going to those kind of minor sectors where it's going to be affecting people who already have nothing to know about how the economy is bad, is going to be affecting anyway. This is where you have to be assessing the magnitude of the economic impact, which help you already to prioritize your argument on which kind of side you use to having to use this kind of magnitude itself. Now, this again help you if you determine it very well whether the effect is small or significant. It help you already to be focusing on the most compelling aspect of your cases right now and to be ensuring that the audience understand what you are already being given on the potential scales of the consequences itself that will happen. Now, on the next slide is that how are you already linking this to the motion itself? And how you already, like the way you take this, how it's giving you more like this economic analysis back to the motion. When is it more essential for coherence and persuasiveness? Because this is what the target goal is at the end of the day, if you want to be debating it and giving more people more plausible, uh, or more way to buy into what you have to be giving them as argument or substance at the end of the day, and more clarity. That's more important as well. Now, how this connection from your argument also is reinforcing the relevance of the economic argument that you're given. And How this done is ensuring now that the audience can clearly see how the analyst supports the debates or like your positions in the debate himself. This way is very important because the link here also is bringing you back to your position as being the prime minister or the closing, you know, member, or even should be from any kind of opposition whip, or like opening like leader of opposition or etc that happening at the end of the day. This way is very important for you to have this kind of link to the motion, like when we're taking your essential, like the essential from your currents, for your currents and your possessiveness, and link it back to it. Now you can see. Now, as you can see, this the whole ones from from this learning economy, from debate that you can see from this slide. I feel like we will having a lot of such to be discussing, and I feel like your questions are welcome. And if there's any clarity you'll be lacking from me to be giving you as well, they are all welcome. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Abraham. I'll just open the floor for questions in a while, and I'll wait for some questions to come into the chat before I direct them to you. But I also want to ask something. So I usually do have problems when I'm talking to people I'm teaching debating around how to like learn more about economics or simple things which will help them in the debating space. So do you think there is any resource or materials that people can access which would help them become better in this particular area?
Yeah, exactly. We have many material online that I'll be sharing the material with you as well, and you'll be giving them as well. And we can, yeah, that's it. We have many materials that will help you in order to, you know, uh actually understand how the economic, motions look like, different from how the financial also ones also look like, or any kind of setup of it. Yeah.
There's a question on the chat. Somebody's mentioning, how do you tie back economics to pragmatics? I'm assuming this is around framing your arguments and showing practical outcomes around economics.
Okay, yeah, I saw the question. How to tie back economics to pragmatics. So the economics himself, I might say, is already pragmatic himself within himself. Because when we're talking about economics, it's giving like it's dealing with the people's preferences at the end of the day, and people preferences and the behavior. Because when we're talking about pragmatics, you want to be telling me about, like, for example, how you'll be implementing like in a particular sectors, as we also deal with the existing motion, as we said, like for example the US aid himself, and it's giving you more way to see, like for example, if it happened, like you are given like the same motion as you said, like how are you going to be using it to be tied into pragmatic, is that like how already this currency is affecting people on the level where, for example, they'll be using it for the daily, traveling, and how it's also affecting how the global market also is look like, for example, from export and import himself. This is where we can see, oh my God. Okay, let me deal with this first of all. So we can see how this is going to be changing a whole lot of systems of. So this is where the economy also comes in as being a more pragmatical level, because this is how economic is, like more of pragmatic than more of a theoretical stuff. I think I have been given more clarity to your question. Okay, let me see here. Let's say in emotion, like this will support the trade barrier on Russia. Yeah. The broader spectrum of economic discussion can easily be spec knowledge. So how do we avoid this pitfall? Okay, I get it. You said this will support the trade barrier on Russia, and you want to know how we can be avoiding the pitfall on like speculation, like like speaking knowledge. First of all, you have to be tackling the trade barrier itself and how the trade barrier is going to be, affecting Russia itself. As you can see from my info slide, I give you guys most of, the principle that is behind the economics itself. Because the Russian itself is, when judging, okay, you say, when judging, can we distinguish between economic that are beyond the spectrum of average reasonable voter? Okay, okay, let me answer the first question that you put first. So before that, how we can also be, avoiding to have, just spec knowledge that you need to be going more deeper. I feel like it's linked to the second question that you brought, like how you have to be more going outside of it. The way we can do it is very simple. Is that you need first of all to focus on what is the existing problem that this motion is putting onto you, and why they support on the trade barrier on Russia, because Russia is only a country, and how Russia is going to be responding to it. This is where the trade-off is going to be, because if the trade barrier comes in, that means that Russia needs to seek for other alternatives not to be surviving, because the trade is the more important thing that Russia can do in order to have any kind of international link with any country himself. Now, if that trade barrier comes in, who is the one having this kind of trade barrier on Russia himself? Where is it coming from as well? You need to be seeking for this kind of entities having this trade barrier with Russia, and to more likely understand it. Now, you said, how are you going to be distinguishing the economic discussion beyond the average voter? Okay. Now, on the level of the average reasonable voter, is that you need to clarify how is it, even like this, where also the judges need to understand, like they don't have to come with some prior or to come with the expertise into any kind of sectors. They are there more for being convinced by any kind of speakers, and the reason for it is that they need to be as well this kind of intelligent average voter, not to be now grasping how this kind of motion is more tackling the core issue that, if for example you might think of it to be tackling as well, or even though you don't have to be have any kind of prior thinking about how it's going to be, and seeing how, for example, as the motion given right now, the barrier, like the trade barrier on Russia right now, is going to be at the end of the day. Because if it's happened that way and you are judging any sort of wrongs out of it to be like more detached from the average voter, that makes you already someone's that is different from being like more likely willing to be convinced, because we are there in order to be getting the more understandable out of any debate. But what happens that, as being a judges, that also means that you don't have to be seeking for the clarity, and you don't have to be seeking for how the coherence of argument is looking like, or how even the rebuttal, the clashes of it is not going to be. This is your role as a judge to be doing so. But the more important thing is that to let yourself be convinced at the end of the day. This is where it's very important. But on the economical level, as we are discussing right now, is that you need to more likely understand how the principle that this person give already to you is more already given with clarity, and how this is having more connection within his argument throughout the whole argument that he's making up. Because right now, it's like you want to be separating yourself from average voter, but you are still being the judge. Like you are both of them, I will say. But just you have to be letting yourself being convinced. Now you say, are there any tangible tips for micro or microeconomic discussion? Let me see. In debate. We have micro and macro himself, but I feel like we cover it next time in our discussion, because it's gonna be more deep himself to discussing it right now here, and I feel like it's gonna make us you know taking more time for it. Now you say some economic motion can have feature certain effects, like in case this becomes relevant to the debate on the future practicality or potential on economic action. how can we bring those into debates better? Now, you are implying, like, for example, here we are having like some economic motions that can have future certain effects. Yeah, and as I can say, like as I said earlier on, is that the economic motion itself deal with the current issue that is happening. For example, if you take like what happened to, like during the COVID-19 level, is that it having like more direct impact on people at the same times where people are confined into their houses, don't have nothing to like where to go, where we can see that the curfew on people where, for example, they don't have some facilities open to certain level. This is where we can see how it's happened, like it's affect more economics in that level, and we see many country that already get the DPT go like went low because they haven't get many of the actors in the sector of, I would say, the tertiary, engaging with the economy himself, not to be letting up. Now, the futurist one that happens that we can see how the COVID-19 COVID-19 already affects affects us, whereby people are more likely opting for online discussion and online, like for example how Zoom also is getting us here, and this is where those kind of innovation can come up. This is where the futuristic impact is going to be, because people are going to be looking for many options. This is where the trade-off also is going to be creating more innovation things, like innovation access to them, not to having to be I would say avoiding any kind of negative impact on themselves, because everybody wants the preferences or any, like the incentive not to be a loss. Everybody wants to have a kind of win-win in any kind of deal that they want to be do, like they want to be engaging with any entities, or even with your peers, or even with any kind of person. But here comes the more impactful ways that this happens when people already, like in the same way as COVID-19, where people already have been confined, and ways of like way like how also to work is that they are having telework, like remote work as well, that is already existing in some companies, and people also can work from their home, which is not before existing. And these are what also happen and can have more future setting effects on them, if I might be clear to you. Now I feel like there's no more question, and
Yep,
Mr.
no more questions are there, Abraham.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's wrap up then. Would that be fine? I'll just give a closing vote of thanks and then we can wrap up.
Yeah, I would just say just a couple of things. Thank you very much, guys, for your attention. And what also can be, the taking into this, that, for example, when it's come to, debating some kind of, economic motion, is more likely like different from how to make people's rich himself. Because you might think like economical level help people, to get rich or to find ways to be more greater than anyone else. It's not how the economical level deals with. It deals with, for example, if it's happened already, so how are you going to be, looking for more alternative means for this person not to be losing, or how it's going to be for, this particular person to offer other things where it's going to hit when his preference is not met. So this is how we can more understand how this happened at the end of the day, and not going more out of it, because it's different for how financial working, and how it's also happen where some long-term policies also work as well, because it's dealing with the current and status quo issues himself, and this is how it's going to be. And this the whole wrap up, wrap up I can give you right now. And yeah, thank you again. Like that's, I would say, the other name is very difficult for me, if you can help me to pronounce it.
Yep. So I just want to say a few words as well before we close out. Thank you, Abraham, again for coming on board and doing the session for us today. It was very informative, and I'm pretty sure all of the people who attended today were able to learn a lot. Thank you for all the members in the audience as well who joined the workshop and have spent their time discussing things with us and also asking brilliant questions. Again, thank you, and we'll hope to see you again soon for our future workshops, both as an audience to all the people who are participating here, but also the facilitator if they have time to have come on board here again and talk to everybody here. Thank you, and have a good evening, good morning, and good night wherever you're located. And see you next time. Thank you.